Hello and welcome to People, Politics and Power on Africa Independent Television, AIT. As you already know, People, Politics and Power has been refocused to take our viewers to a perfect point of political discourse. Indeed, what we set out to achieve is forge a consensus on every national issue and build a cohesive, indissoluble and prosperous nation. We have been discussing the vexed issue of restructuring. The matter has indeed become so difficult to resolve and causing much debate. Should we restructure Nigeria? How do we go about it, and where do we start from? Even as some commentators insist on fiscal restructuring, which implies a federal structure which devolves physical independence to the state and by extension ethnic regions, is that all there is in restructuring? We have invited a university lecturer to discuss this issue with us. It is distinctly noticeable that a lot of people pushing for this issue in the media speak about restructuring loosely. Nigeria desires deeper understanding of the issue so that people will not continue to construe restructuring to meaning splitting Nigeria. My name is Odion Bello. You're welcome.
But really, as you can hear, the undertones, a lot of work has got to be done. A fantastic lot of work has got to be done amongst ourselves and everybody else. When we talk about resource control, for example, where does the resource go to? To the state governments, to the communities, to the local governments? Where? And what institutions should accept these resources? When we talk about true federalism, what really we're talking about is very simple. There are many things which can be done which really doesn't need the presence of the federal government. And those things can be done locally at the state level, or in a combination states. In other words, flexibility is possible towards the achievement of programs. I think it is remarkable that throughout all this discussion, nobody has said anything about the unity of Nigeria being threatened. And I think that's a great step forward. In other words, we're starting from the beginning that no matter what happens, we're still going to be in Nigeria.
What we in the Northern Elders Forum, if I can refer to my group, are saying is that there is nothing wrong with Nigerians sitting as we are sitting here today to discuss issues of serious concerns to the development and future of this country. And I was the chairman of the drafting committee in the 1987 Constitutional Conference, Chapter 2. And this is where the soul of the Nigerian Constitution is Chapter 2, if you look at it carefully. But Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution has been completely ignored. If you care to go and read a copy and look at what is going on the ground, you know that the Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution has been thrown away. And this is why we're having so much problem and so much difficulty. Today, if you look at resources and their management or mismanagement, as the case may be, I come from Kaduna State. Population, according to the 2006 census, puts us at about 6.3 million. And if you look at resources that come from the so-called federation account to Kaduna State, it is 1/4 of what Delta gets. So one expects in terms of resource allocation and development, you expect 4 times the kind of development that should happen in Kaduna, 4 times that in the Delta. But when I went to Warri to see my leader, twice I lost my shock absorbers between the airport and his hotel. And in fact, if you just go and check the recent budgets that have been approved by the various state governments in the country, I did an exercise on this recently and found that the budgets of the states in the Niger Delta is equal to the state of the entire northern states, 19 northern states, put together. The budget that has been approved. And this is true. You can't take that. It's a fact. So why the money? Who has it? Who has it? So this is why I'm emphasizing management rather than issue of control. And if we can really sincerely sit down and look at how we have been mismanaging the resources of this country, small as they are, we should have been able to go a distance far from where we are now. Far from where we are now. And I would like to convey the apparent warmth I've seen here, concerns that I've heard from people I have known for decades now about the future of the country. At some point, I got angry, and I sometimes repeat this. And when the chairman said that this country is indivisible, is indissoluble, and so on, who said so? People who sat down and wrote the Constitution. Who told you that countries are not dissoluble or dissoluble? So many countries have been dissolved that started as one. Give you an example of India. It started as one, 1948. By the following year, it was India and Pakistan. By the following second 2-3 years, it's Pakistan and Bangladesh. And there are so many incidences. Only recently, the so-called oldest democracy in the world, Britain, had a referendum from Scotland. Scotland wanted to opt out. So what is required of all of us is honesty in our dealings with each other. We should be honest, direct, and once we are honest and direct, and our leaders are sincere, in terms of their responsibilities as leaders of this country has great potentials that should be the envy of many countries around the world. There is no country that is as endowed as Nigeria around the world today, I'm telling you.
The truth of the matter is that our country missed roads. In January 1966, tragedy struck our country. There was a coup and a counter-coup in July, a state of emergency, a declaration of Biafra, and a declaration of war. And thereafter, we handed political management of our country to a people who by training are trained to resolve things physically and by force, not by diplomacy and negotiation. The 2 constitutions that we've had in Nigeria are constitutions written by the military, the 1979 and the present constitution. It is a fallacy to say that we, the people of Nigeria, have written a constitution. We have never written one. And I think that those of us who are politicians and civilians must take serious responsibility for our inability to do one. And the time is now. Everybody can see that this country is not working. Some say it's a question of leadership. Some say it's a question of corruption, and that once you solve it, it's over. Some say it is a question of resource control and of restructuring of the federation. Some say it's all of the above. But the truth of the matter is that we face an existential problem, which if we do not solve, this country will atrophy. All the international indices ascribed to nations show us as a failed nation. The Global Terrorism Index ranks Nigeria third after Iraq and Afghanistan, ahead of Pakistan and Syria. The World Economic Forum ranks Nigeria 127 out of 138 on the Global Competitive Index. The UNESCO ranks Nigeria with Chad and Pakistan and Ethiopia as the worst educational system in the world. In the United Nations Human Development Index of the United Nations Development Program, Nigeria ranks 152 out of 188 countries and is the lowest among OPEC countries. The data points to a bleak future as we march to post-oil world without a coherent plan to reduce conflict and build a national consensus. On the positive side, there is a consensus that Nigeria is highly potentiated with 182 million people, and it's a land of plenty, and that with better leadership, we can grow our place. But sadly, this is overwhelmed by the challenges that face us. Our younger ones are extremely worried about the future of our country. The next 50 years could be very challenging for our country. For instance, it is estimated in some quarters that in 2050, in 33 years' time, Nigeria will be the fourth most populous country in the world. This means that Nigeria, which is just twice the size of Texas, will be more populous than the United States of America. Meanwhile, as of today, our GDP is barely 2% of that of the United States. At the same time, in years ahead, we could face severe ecological challenges that will impact negatively on our economy. The desert is encroaching southwards at a speed of 6 kilometers per annum. Thus, within 33 years, we could lose about 200 kilometers of land to the desert across northern Nigeria. This could exacerbate competition for arable land in the north and elsewhere with dire political consequences. In the southeast, we expect more ecologically induced dislocation. For instance, the government of Anambra State estimates that 40% of the state is threatened by erosion. In the south-south, by 2050, we will be dealing with the reality of a post-oil economy and yet have massive environmental degradation that is yet unattended to. There is also the possibility that much of the mangrove ecosystem could be lost to deforestation. Lagos could have a population of up to 50 million and face unbearable challenges of massive urbanization. We must become more responsive to the world around us, or we and our children will be left behind. There are some fears and anxieties on the part of our youths. We have long allowed the bitterness of the war and its lingering feelings to dictate our political relationships. Consequently, we are blind to the truth about the fact that our country is failing and that we need urgent steps to salvage it. These steps must be founded on the principle of justice.
As citizens, you all deserve a country that works, not merely for the rich or connected, but for everyone. And our promise to you is that we will, with your support and cooperation, take every step needed to create that country of our dreams. We also know that this journey will of necessity take time, but will not succumb to the temptation to take shortcuts that ultimately complicate the journey. We did not find ourselves in crisis overnight, and we do not expect overnight solutions to our challenges. The most important thing is that we are on the right path and that we'll not deviate from it, even in the face of strong temptation to choose temporary gain over long-term benefit. As the President has summed it up, and I quote, "The old Nigeria is slowly but surely disappearing, and a new era is rising," end of quote. And so we commemorate this second anniversary of our administration with confidence and optimism. I firmly believe that we have put the most difficult phase behind us, and we are witnesses to the ever-increasing intensity of the light at the end of the tunnel. We ask for your continued cooperation and support to enable us realize all of our best intentions and ambitions for Nigeria. On our part, we'll continue to carry you along on this journey, to speak to you, to explain the challenges, and to share our vision. And while we all daily preoccupy ourselves with pursuing the Nigerian dream, which is the desire to better our lives and circumstances vigorously and honestly, it is inevitable that grievances and frustration will arise from time to time. This is normal. What is not normal or acceptable is employing these frustrations as justification for indulging in discrimination or hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, or for seeking to undermine by violent or other illegal means the very existence of the sovereign entity that has brought us together as brothers and sisters and citizens. Nigeria belongs to all of us. No one person or group of persons is more important or more entitled than the other in this space that we all call home. And we have a responsibility to live in peace and harmony with one another, to seek peace and constitutional means of expressing our wishes and desires, and to resist all who might seek to sow confusion and hatred for their own selfish interests.
The Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we need, is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT. Join us to build bridges of unity.
And with me in the studio is a professor of political science from the University of Abuja, Professor Sadiq Abba. Welcome to People, Politics and Power.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure.
Actually, we are starting from the perspective of both academic and political understanding of restructuring. But before we actually go into the nitty-gritty of restructuring, the acting president just said something now, which we both watched. We are on the right path. Old Nigeria is passing away, and new Nigeria is here. Do you fully agree?
Well, I think if you are able to listen very well to the acting president, what he meant is that the old Nigeria, whereby things are done within the context of Nigerian factor, is fast diminishing away. The old Nigeria, whereby some group of individuals will just come together and hang the nation by its jugular vein, is fading away. The old Nigeria, whereby you can just walk up from the wrong side of your bed, using the wrong side of your own arm to mobilize Nigerian youth and Nigerian men on the street for negative reasons, is equally diminishing away. So there is hope. We are not there yet. It is not yet El Dorado, it's not yet Uhuru, but yet as a Nigerian you can see there are some positive signals on the horizon that if we continue with this path, if we continue with this in these particular directions, if we pursue vigorously our destination as it has been defined today, certainly the end is going to justify the means, especially taking into considerations that development, growth, progress, prosperity of nations are not achieved within a blinking of an eye. It takes a long-term process with discipline, with dedication, with commitment, with valor, with patriotism, with in-depth nationalism, both from the side of leadership as well as from the side of followership. For a nation to beat HSS, we have arrived. Nigeria, are we on the right course? Yes. Why? Because For the first time in so long a time, we have leadership that are very conscious of what they are supposed to do. We have leadership that are very committed about what they are supposed to do. We have leadership that are ready to sacrifice, which is very, very much absent in the past, in the previous Nigerian scenario. So this is what gives us hope. It's not enough for Nigerians to just cross our fingers and say, we wait for the leadership to take us to the El Dorado, to the promised land. No, we should insist, we should demand, we should force them to account for every actions, inactions, reactions, and counter-reactions that every leader from the local government, councillor to the president are doing. So that is the only way out for Nigerians.
Good, Prof. You are so optimistic that a new Nigeria is on the way. Now, we invited you here for the purpose of actually understanding restructuring. Because in some quarters, some Nigerians even see restructuring as splitting Nigeria. Restructuring ordinarily means organizing differently. But that is academic meaning. We need a political understanding.
You see, even within the academic cycle, there is no consensus on restructuring. The definitions, the meaning, understand, the concept as an operational variable, there is no consensus among academicians. Worst of all, within the political cycle, there is no agreement, there is no consensus as far as what the word or concept restructuring stands for in Nigeria. And apart from even the definitions of the meaning, in Nigeria, the academicians are confused at the university system. The media houses are helpless and hopeless to some extent. The politicians are highly mischievous with the concept of restructuring. So where do we stand? I think the beginning of wisdom for all Nigerians is to ask ourselves sincerely and honorably, do we need to remain together or we want to keep our ways? And that does not mean if you are keeping your ways, we are going to pick up arms and ammunition, we are going to go into war and battles, we are going to go into destructions and violence engagements. No. It's restructuring as a concept all over the world, either from the point of view of metaphysics and metaphysics or from the point of view of epistemology, is a positive concept. It's an exercise, it's a process that every nation, every country, every community looks happily, pleasurably towards to. But the reason why it is so much different in Nigeria is the context under which restructuring is being pronounced and repronounced in Nigeria. In Nigeria today, if you say restructuring, the first idea that will come to an average northerner is you want to exercise the entire north out of Nigeria. There's a mentality. If you go to the south, an average south-southerner will feel that what is restructuring is resource control. If you pick an average Igbo man on the street of Onitsha or Aba, it is about Biafra. And if you go to the southwest, the Yorubas, what is restructuring? To them, it is sovereignty. That is pseudo-sovereignty within the nation. None, among all the federating components of Nigeria, none of these components is addressing restructuring from its own positive engagement point of view.
It's selfish.
It's selfish. I am yet to see a single Nigerian. I may be wrong. And I deserve some rest because at my age now, I am yet to see a single Nigerian, either academician, politician, or in the media industry, that define and project restructuring from its own historical, from its own epistemological or metaphysical, or from the point of view of a national interest reality. Every bloody speaker speaks from the point of view of his own selfish, greedy, and self-centered interest. So that is why the challenge is in Nigeria. And the big question is, do we need restructuring in Nigeria? Is it imperative to restructure in Nigeria? Is restructuring the only force in Nigeria? The answer is yes. Anybody who tries to run away from the reality of restructuring in Nigeria is not living rightly, or is not even conscious of the realities that is operating and driving Nigeria as a state today. But we have to sit down and come to a conclusion or come to an agreement. What does structuring stand for? And what does structuring portend for Nigeria and Nigerians? Is it about power struggle? Is it about ability to control resources of the country? Is it about political patronage? Is it about economic redistribution of the economic wealth of society to at least to promote the interest of your own agenda? These are questions that Nigerians are supposed to. We believe, whether overtly or covertly, that restructuring Nigeria is the only way forward that can put Nigeria among the developed nations of the world. But there are fundamental questions. What is the model? Nobody, you see, you meet Nigerians all over the country talking about restructuring. Ask them, what model are you going to use to restructure Nigeria? They'll keep quiet. We shall do it. How do we do it? We are not God. We are human beings, and human beings have to plan, has to bring up models and pursue it. What models are we going to put on the table for a Hausa man from the north, an Igbo man from the east, Yoruba man from the south, Ijo or Ishekiri person from the south, to come on board in a designated table? This is the model that we are going to adopt. Nobody. And I'm telling you, Mr. Ojo, go into your history of restructuring literatures. You will never find a single Nigerian who came up with a very sound model through which Nigeria can restructure and be able to at least address these issues, these gaps in Nigeria that we are all crying about. Nobody has ever come up with this one. The closest person I can remember that came very close to putting a model was Alex Ekweme, when he muted the idea of geopolitical zones in Nigeria. And that he did not say it within the context and contents of restructuring. He said it within the context of what? Power sharing. Since the only problem that denies or fails to address power sharing formula in Nigeria is because every section of Nigeria is now clamoring to hold the center for obvious reasons. So Ekweme, in his own wisdom, came up with 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. That is the closest model as far as restructuring models is in Nigeria. But nobody took it further than that. So the question is, if there are no models, what mechanism? What mechanism? We are all living witnesses in Nigeria from the 1978 Constitutional Conference to the last conference that was convened by Jonathan administration. What mechanisms were employed, were put in place for the purpose of at least debating, even at the level of debating between the various nationalities in Nigeria, in order to come up with a restructured Nigeria that can address and accommodate the interests, the yearnings, the aspirations, and the inherent unity that has been missing for the past 60 years in Nigerian history. There is no mechanism. You think restructuring is a manna from heaven? You go to the mosque and pray and Allah drop structuring, or you go to the church and you pray and Allah drop structuring for you. It is a serious business. It is a fundamental national issue that needs fundamental national solutions. And it is only people who are very committed, people who are very conscious, people who are very determined, and people who can has an element of sacrifice in their hearts and in their souls, not for themselves, but for their fellow nationalists and for the love of their own country, that can restructure their own. We have a lot of examples all over the world. But in Nigeria, from my own ignorant point of view, Mr. Dio, I don't see any model, I don't see any mechanism, and there is no structure itself. And let me tell you, let's not even go jump the gun. For you to restructure, there must be a bad structure on ground. Is it not so?
Which we need to organize differently.
Yes, I like your definition. It has to be organized differently. That's a working definition. But I ask you a question. At your age, do you have a structure in Nigeria? Is Nigeria a living structure? We all say that the 1914 was a mistake. We have been saying that. Intellectuals say this, politicians say it, you in the media escalated to the highest heaven that 1914 was a mistake.
Well, we are not doing anything about it.
We are not doing anything. And why was it a mistake? Because we don't believe in the structure that the 1914 put in place. I'll give an example, which is very bitter for the audience to hear. We all glorify and dignify and to some extent deify 3 individuals in Nigeria. As Northerners, we glorify Ahmadu Bello. The Easterners glorify Azikwe, the Zik of Africa. Yes. And the Yorubas, Obafemi Awolowo. But are they Nigerians?
Let's say the truth. Are these three people Nigerians? Because they never live until they die. They were not. They were never Nigerians.
Why do you say so?
Yes. I'm a product of academics. You read their books. If you want to read the mind of somebody, read what he wrote. Ahmadu Bello wrote in his book, My Life, Nigeria is nothing but what? A mere colonial joke. It's a novelty. He wrote in his book, My Life. In that book, he preferred to become the Sultan of Sokoto for one day than to become the Prime Minister of Nigeria for 100 years. And that's why when the NPC met the independent election in 1959, he refused to go and become Prime Minister in Lagos. He said, Abubakar, kaje Lagos, kazama Prime Minister, kashashai kachi biscuit. Go to Lagos and become the Prime Minister. For Ahmadu Bello, I'm waiting for the Sultanate vacancy. I rather become the Sultan of Sokoto than to become the Prime Minister of Nigeria for 100 years.
Because he believed there was no structure on ground?
He said Nigeria is a colonial joke. It's a colonial novelty. If you read Zik, as even his last recent book, before he died, The Political Ideology of Nigeria, what did he say? Don't even go to my Odyssey. Even recently, when he contested 2 elections and failed, he said Nigeria is what? Nigeria exists only in the minds of those who created Nigeria. And the beginning of wisdom is the fear of an evil man in Nigeria. That's what he said. Awolowo, in his book, Voice of Reason, Voice of Wisdom, Voice of Courage. These are the 3 pamphlets that he wrote. And apart from these 3 pamphlets, even in his earlier book, My March Through Prison and the Republic, he said Nigeria is nothing but a mere geographical expression. You only exist on map. These are your nationalists. These are your national elder statement. These are the people that fought for your independence. These are the people that define your destiny and your destinations in Nigeria. But none of them believe in Nigerian structure. Now, in the 21st century, Odio, we sit down, we want to restructure Nigeria. Nobody believed in Nigeria. Until recently, all our elections is outside the context of Nigeria. It's primordialism, religiosity, ethnicity, tribal sentiments, etc. There was no elections in the recent past that was held. 2011, it was between the North and the South. It is between the Muslims, North, and the Southern Christians. It is between the Muslim as President Aspirant Buhari and the Christian soldier of Christ, Jonathan Goodluck. That was the only tools of analysis. That was the only ingredients of political considerations. It repeated itself in 2050 elections. Nobody went to vote. There's a slight difference in 2050 elections. But in 2011, that was the only consideration.
Okay, hold on, Prof. What we are saying now is we may not be blaming present leaders so much, because from what you have said, the impossible mission of restructuring Nigeria started even from the founding fathers of Ahmadu Bello, Zik, and Obafemi Awolowo. Yes. Because they too were talking about it, but could not do anything about it.
You see, as at then, the reason why they could not do anything, I don't blame them, because they don't believe in Nigeria.
Is that not unfortunate?
Yes, it's unfortunate. Even Lugard himself did not even believe in Nigeria. Did you read his memos to the Commonwealth Office in London when he sent the memos about amalgamation of North and South? He said, I don't know what came into my mind even to mute this particular idea, but I know whatsoever it is, the eggheads in London in the Commonwealth Office will not agree with my own idea. They will never approve the amalgamation of the North and the South. But Lord
Lugard was privy to the amalgamation.
He was the architect of the amalgamation. But when this memo that he wrote defining the amalgamation, he told his wife, it's not workable. There are so much differences in these people. But he said, subsequently, read the dual mandate. He said that since this thing went through, only history and posterity will determine how far these people will go, because they have the potentiality and they have the challenges inherent within that potentiality. And it is this challenge that Lugard identified over 100 years ago. We have the potentiality and the inherent challenges within these potentialities to take us to the moon that we fail to define. And people are defining it wrongly in the language, mischievous language of restructuring. And today, if the entire Nigeria says we should restructure, what is going to be the agenda of restructuring? How do you restructure? What is the mechanism of restructuring? Who are going to be the actors of restructuring? These are questions that nobody seems to raise, so that at least it can raise our consciousness and be able to open our eyes to the realities of the world. The restructuring is a serious business, audio. If you go into history, for the past 400, since 1649, the Treaty of Westphalia, until today, 1648, 1649, until today, so restructuring is not a happenstance issue. It's not a process of it's not a process whose product will come into through what you call accident or incidents of political decisions.
Does it mean we are clamoring for restructuring ignorantly?
No, you see, those actors and champions of restructuring, to be sincere to them, to be very fair to them, they are not ignorant. They know exactly what restructuring means. But let me tell you, this is why they are not going along this line. They cut corners. It's because they knew once it is restructured, Nigeria is restructured, they are going to lose power, value and relevance. That is their greatest fear. It is people like the people on the street that will now benefit from restructuring, not them. All these elites, political elites, religious elites, traditional elites, academic elites, media elites like you, all of us, I'm included, all of us, once Nigeria is restructured, we will lose value.
Okay, this is what Professor Ango Abdullahi was saying in that insight we watched, that it may be very difficult to achieve true federalism, that is one, and that he does not want to hear that Nigeria is indivisible, indissoluble, that who said so? That, okay, look at the history of India. Pakistan came out, later Bangladesh. That if pulling out will solve the problem, why not? So what you are saying now is in agreement with what Professor Abdullahi said, that it is a question of honesty and sincerity on the part of our leaders.
Exactly.
Are we continuing like this?
Yes and no. Yes, because the people that drive Nigeria do not want restructuring. No, an average Nigerian who is supposed to be the soldier of restructuring wants restructuring, but he doesn't have the capacity to do so. So that's why I say it is yes and no. Let me give an example. A few years ago, you see, Nigerians, we are pretenders, we are dreamers. A few years ago, I remember in 2009 or 2008, Gaddafi of Libya says, Nigeria, we are taking Africa backward. Please, since the problem is religion in Nigeria, divide the country into half. Muslims should go one side, Christians should go one side. He gave a model. But what happened? Including the government of Nigeria was on his neck. That he is a jihadist. Bring a proper model. Nobody brought. Gaddafi, Ekweme gave us a beginning.
The geographical zones.
Yes, geopolitical zones.
Yes.
A perfect model to start with. Nobody built on that. Gaddafi gave us another model, even though it may not sound palatable to Nigerians. But nobody gave it any attention. So, you see, the problem is this. If we restructure, how are you going to restructure Nigeria? People confuse true federalism with restructuring. They are two different concepts altogether. In fact, they are diametrically opposed. There is no way you can come and tell me that true federalism means restructuring. There's the confusion. Even in the academic cycle, you have professors that cannot even profess well. They cannot differentiate between restructuring and true federalism. And unfortunately, there are professors of political science, sociology, professors of history. That's a misfortune. You have politicians who cannot even define these two concepts, and they superintend our national destinies. We have media houses that are very lazy in research. They don't do it. They are helpless and hopeless. So the question is, why do we go from here as restructuring? This way, okay, the north, let's start with the northern Nigeria, 19 states of northern Nigeria. Let's go out of Nigeria as northern Nigeria. Is it so simplistic like this? There are 4 states or 3 states in northern, they are Christian dominated. Are you going to impose Sharia on them? Is it what Allah says in the Quran? Or what the Prophet says in his hadith? You should impose religion on people? It's not.
And of course, the other states who want to impose Sharia.
Yes. So, and other states, out of 19 states, 15 to 16 will want to go Sharia. And Allah says there is no compulsion in religion. Or if you allow the 3 states to go Christian republicanism, because this is the political system that Jesus Christ practiced in his 3 years administration, Christian or Republican Christianity. Are they going to impose Christian republicanism
within that country?
Within that country, where Muslims are the minority? Are they fair to the Muslims? These are questions. Even within the north, a single geopolitical zone, you restructure, so you become, which name are you going to give northern Nigeria? That can accommodate the realities, almost over 200 tribes and ethnicities and religious diversities. It's a problem. If you go to, look, the perfect example of people who are agitating for self-rule now is the Biafra. Can the Igbos stand? Can the Igbos stand now? They are landlocked by the south-south and landlocked by the Yorubas and landlocked by the north. And they are in the middle. No access to sea, no access to national boundary as it is today. And they want to go restructure it. And out of 40% of Igbos are outside Southeast Nigeria with abundant human and material resources. It running into maybe 2 trillion or over 2 trillion. If they restructure, they cry Biafra. You see, a houseman will allow anyone to carry his house from Kano back to Aba or his factory. There is no model of agreement how you structure. There is no mechanism how you structure. It's going to be a mundane, pedestrian way of restructuring. Just like Colonial Master sat in Berlin Conference and restructure Africa according to our colonial interest. That's what we are going to do. Or if you move the houses in the south, should come back to the north. People who were born over 100 years ago, or the Yorubas in Sokoto, Zamfara, Borno, Adamawa, they should go back to Yoruba land.
Those who are already contesting elections there.
In my secondary school, we finished with Yorubas and Igbos. We have Gongola State Scholarship. They are indigenous of Adamawa by birth. They receive Gongola State Scholarship for the past 20, 30 years. So if there is restructuring, Chidebere, my friend, my childhood friend that we or Dele Babalola, a Yoruba man, or Momo from Auchi. That all we grew up. We went to river together, we play football together, we climb trees together, we hunt together. As Yorubas, Igbos, and somebody from Auchi. Now, we restructure Nigeria, we ask them, Park, go back to your states.
You seem to be saying that the solution to Nigeria's woes is not on the cry of restructuring, but something else.
Yes.
Like what?
Chinua Achebe said it. The trouble of Nigeria is leadership. I can assure you, Odion, if there is a madman at the presidency, or if there is a dog at the presidency, if there are monkeys in your state government house, and there are lizards in your local government headquarters, and they are doing the right thing, you don't bother who is governing you. You don't even have the time to talk about who is governing you. It's because there is no good governance. People appropriate governance to individual interests rather than community interests. That's why all these issues. And the most unfortunate thing in Nigeria is simple. Those who are agitating for whatever they're agitating, and I believe it's not true federalism and it's not true restructuring, is because they fail to direct their anger and their energies against those that are very close to them. If I want to fight, look, let me give an example. Under Jonathan Goodluck, they told me that Jonathan Goodluck doesn't like a Muslim and a northerner. So he is hell-bent in making me to suffer. And they were promoting this. Then I asked my friends, I said, okay, I believe Jonathan doesn't like northerner or Muslims. You agree? I say yes, okay. Now, what is my governor, Murtala Nyako, doing with my state allocation? This was supposed to... Jonathan is too far away from Abuja. See my governor. Can he account? There's political accountability between me and my governor. What is he doing with
state resources?
No Adamawa man is asking this question. Just like no other state person who is agitating for restructuring or resource control is asking about their governors. My chairman of a local government, the day you give him money, he ran to Cameroon to go and enjoy with beautiful girls. He abandoned governance. If you go to other states, they always go to Port Harcourt or Lagos or come to Abuja. The far northern states, they come to Kaduna. It's just
they
a
won't
party.
travel out of the country.
Yes, they even travel out of the country. It's about good governance. It's about political accountability. It's about sincerity of purpose of leadership. It was encapsulated in Chinua Achebe's work. The trouble in Nigeria is leadership.
So I say that even if resource control is even in order, these leaders will still waste the resources.
Let me tell you, at a point, I'm a political scientist. I did analysis of federal government allocations to states. The Northeast zone, the 6th Northeast zone, is not receiving up to one state in the South-South. One state. And when I went to this South-South states, I'm a little bit disappointed because I'm expecting to see marvelous developments, heartbreaking developments, but there is none. But those people in that state will not ask the governors, what did you do with this quantum of billions that was given to you? The governor will deceive them that it is, your enemy is not me, it's somebody from Abuja, Buhari, Osibanjo. They create fictitious scenarios because there are no citizens in Nigeria. We are not yet a citizen. And subjects, prisoners, slaves don't elect good leaders. They elect rulers. In Nigeria, because constitutionally, Nigerian citizens have compromised the chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution.
Yes, I was coming to that.
We have willingly, consciously, deliberately, purposefully compromised the God-given privilege given to citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as encapsulated in the chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution.
Can you give us a breakdown of that chapter 2? You know, we were talking about this before the program started.
The chapter 2 of the Constitution is the social contract, the social pact. It defines the agreement, the pact, the contract between the government and the Nigerian citizens. In terms of socio-economic benefits, etc., etc. This chapter 2 defines not only the roles, but the responsibility of government, the duty of government to the citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But no Nigerian, all those who are agitating for restructuring, resource control, sovereignty, Araba from the north, Araba, all these people, nobody is addressing this particular concept or this particular issue of chapter 2 from the point of view of their own socio-economic development and underdevelopment. They do it from ethnicity, tribalism, religious bigotry, sectional affiliations. None. So as far as Nigeria is concerned, Nigeria doesn't exist first. My challenge as a Nigerian man, what I want to bequeath to my children, is I want to go beyond our nationalists. Ahmadu Bello, Azikiwe, and Awolowo. Let's make Nigeria as a structure. And let's have a model under which this new structure will work. So that at least others will come and build upon it. In the next 50 years, an average Nigerian will be a superpower, not only politically but economically. But the way we are going, there is no hope. Unless this government that is in place now decides to keep faith with Nigeria and Nigerians, the way Osibanjo is running from pillar to post, the way Buhari is trying to die for Nigeria, which is not worth it, unless and until.
No, it's worth it. Is that not one of the ways by which you can get a model Nigeria?
But they are saying that the people are saying they wanted to Biafra. In the present while they are trying to salvage Nigeria, even the wobbling structure, they said they want to go. People are saying, look, yesterday I had on federal government, what do you call it? Federal Executive Council meeting. Yeah. Over 436 billion was spent in the 6 states, or this 9 states of Niger Delta Development Commissions. Go to those states, you won't see even 45 billion naira worth of projects. Why is the money? But those people, they cannot protest on the streets, demanding accountability. They hit at Buhari, they hit at Osibanjo. The governors the citizens of northern Nigeria will not push their governors to account. They see recessions as an economic weapon Buhari is using to punish them. That is the beauty of their own ignorance. That's the beauty of their own ineptitude. And it is what the politicians and the enemies of Nigeria in terms of elitism that are exploiting to the advantage. And they say we should restructure Nigeria. But structure to look, we don't like what is on ground. Nigeria is a mistake, 1914 mistake. What model do you have? What option do you have? Because you cannot transfer from something that is very bad to nothing. Transformations, change, restructuring is the process of at least promoting an irrelevant
structure or institutions into more beneficial, socially and politically beneficial institution or structure. We don't even believe in the wobbling structure. We don't have faith in the wobbling structure. Then how do we create a conducive structure? It's like 1986, when they say SAP, Structural Adjustment Policy.
Yes.
There were no structures to adjust as then, but Bangladesh imposed SAP on us, and the economy fell flat. This is what we are saying. If you structure something that doesn't exist, you go back to worse than square zero. You suffer. And the beginning of wisdom is that, let me tell you, Audio, nobody restructure a nation apart from its citizens. In Nigeria, we don't have citizens. We have slaves, we have subjects, and we have prisoners. And
who are ready to dance to the tune of political leaders.
Politically, religiously, ethnically, tribalism. This is our own God that we worship as Nigerians. And the Nigerian state is created not to serve Nigerians. Every state is an entity in itself, by itself, for itself. There is no citizens there. It is citizens that force states, based on their constitutional requirements and provisions, to now do certain things in line with the interests, dreams, and aspirations of the citizens. For the first challenge is, who is a citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria? If they appoint Odiombelo today as minister, they say, his zone is having more ministers than my zone. They don't see you as a Nigerian who is ready to work for Nigeria, because they don't believe in Nigeria, so they don't even believe that you can be a Nigerian. So you are just a bloody Odiombelo from one angle of Nigeria. Why is Nigeria? Why are Nigerians? If they challenge Nigerians to come and prove that they are Nigerians, it's very difficult for us to prove. In our hearts, in our mind, and in our soul, it's very difficult.
So that means we in the media, we have a lot of job to do, most especially in enlightening the people about Chapter 2 of the Constitution.
Yes, certainly. You see, I appreciate the challenges Nigerian media professionals are passing through, especially, not the owners. The owners are just enjoying. I'm talking about people like you, the foot soldiers, the operators. The operators. I'm telling you, if you can operate a media in Nigeria, you're going to be a hero outside Nigeria, because the challenges and the limitations imposed on typical Nigerian journalists is quite enormous. So, but be this as it may, please, the essence of every media is not only to inform, but is to educate and mobilize. That's what these two roles. Nigerian media have been informing. They don't set agenda through good educational policies, programs, and they don't mobilize Nigerians positively. They mobilize negatively. A typical Nigerian journalist can mobilize negatively. If you give a typical professional Nigerian journalist the entire world, he can mobilize positively, because it's not in his own professional conduct and character. He doesn't know it. So the essence is, the journalists are part and parcel of the so-called citizenry of the Federation. So they should play the leading role. Educate, inform, mobilize, and the rest will be history.
Yes, set agenda. Yeah. Now, it's a pity, maybe by tomorrow or when next you are with us, we need to talk about those who prepared the two constitutions. Definitely they were not politicians. And that one, in some political circles, it is believed that that is still one of our problems, because people who have prepared these constitutions were out to always solve problems by force, not by diplomacy or by enemies. But it's unfortunate, time is not on our side this day. We hope maybe tomorrow or some other time we will go into that. So, Prof, I really thank you for finding time to come on the program.
It's a pleasure to meet you and to meet the audience.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And I pray Nigeria should be restructured positively.
Amen. Professor Sadiq Abba is a professor of political science from the University of Abuja. Well, two things that we really want you to take away from here. Nigeria needs honest and sincere leaders, not just talking about restructuring and restructuring. And for now, we should know how to hold our leaders accountable. I am Odiombelo. Bye for now.